Testing 1 2 1 2.
What's so the library has a brand new. Is the microphone working properly? The the library has a brand new strategic plan that includes a new mission statement. The old one I thought was excellent, lasted for more than 20 years. Free and equal access to the joys of reading, independent learning, number of other things for our diverse community. Now they've completely gotten rid of it. There's no free and equal. It's connecting groups to learning, not independent learning, other groups for our diverse community. I don't know how you would measure the success of the new mission statement. It's troubling to me that there's no mention of books or reading. The library has more and more invested in electronic materials. More and more I see long waiting lists for print, availability right away for electronic material, and more I'm seeing titles only in electronic material. And the library, if you visit, does not give you access, for example, to a Kindle or something like that, if that's the only place you can read it. They don't give you a headset if you want to listen to a community meeting like this while they're open. They talk about computer service, but it's incomplete and obviously most disadvantageous to folks who don't have access. So those are some real concerns that I've got. I would say that the library is more and more seems to be catering for those who put the people in power into position, which is the mayor. The mayor appoints the city librarian and all the commissioners, and who is funding mayoral campaigns, tech, and largely real estate. So they're always on a building, almost always on a building program, and they're touting computers like crazy. If anybody is concerned about library being free and equal for everybody, and serving the public in a more independent way, I'd love to talk with you further. Thanks very much.
Do we have other announcements? Or on Zoom? Okay, well, I'll mention. So we have our HANC board election next month in November. So we're still taking nominations that are open, and also the HANC board has put forward a slate of candidates that we've proposed that will run for next November. And so we printed it in our most recent October voice. And so you can see it there. We have copies over here also. So I just wanted to run through what the nominations the board has put forward. And so I'll just go through quickly. And if you're in the room or if you're on Zoom, maybe you could wave, or if you're on Zoom, turn your camera on and say hi. So we have, for the HANC board slate, we have as president, Richard Ivanhoe, who's here. Hi, Richard. Hello. And as vice president, Nate Horrell. And as recording secretary, Bruce Wolf. And then corresponding secretary is James Sword, who I don't think is here. And then our treasurer, Kristen Evans.
Hey, y'all.
Hello. Hi. Yay. And then nominating chair, Lisa Aubrey.
Hello.
Hi. And then membership chair, Karen Fishkin, who might be on there, maybe not. And then our housing and land use chair, Calvin Welch. And then for our members at large, 6 seats, we have Tab Buckner, who I don't think is with us. And then Danielle McVeigh. Wait, not sure, maybe some, maybe not. And then Alice Mosley, who's here with us. Yay. And then Jim Rhodes, who's not here, and then Christian Vyas, who's not here, and then David Wu with me. So I will, yes. Yeah, so those, the slate that the board has put forward. So the election will happen next month at our general membership meeting, and those who have been, who are currently members and have been members for at least a month can participate in the vote. And so it's another good time to just remind folks to renew your membership. It's about that time of year. So you can do that through online at hanc-sf.org. Or you can also write a check or cash and give it to one of us, preferably maybe Richard or Kristen if she's here, or me, yes. You have to be a member to vote in the HANC board election. And to be a member, you have to either live in the Haight-Ashbury in the geographic boundaries, work or own a business, or perform a service in the Haight-Ashbury. So those are the requirements for being a member. For yes, correct. Yes, correct. No, our boundaries did not get redistricted. Thankfully. Okay. So now, before we shift to discussing Prop 33, we just wanted to share some of the HANC, the Haight-Ashbury Neighborhood Council's ballot endorsements specifically for the California propositions, because we feel like those needed a little bit more love and attention. So I'm just going to quickly go through and restate the California ballot propositions that the HANC board has endorsed. And we might have a slide for that. If I take your time, it's okay if you don't. So we have our full list. Ballot endorsements, again, is in our October HANC Voice newsletter. But for the California propositions, we have endorsed yes on Prop 3, which is the constitutional right to marriage, and yes on Prop 4, which authorizes bonds for safe drinking water, wildfire prevention, and protecting communities and natural lands from climate risks. Yes on Prop 5, which allows local bonds for affordable housing and public infrastructure. Yes on Prop 6, which eliminates constitutional provision allowing involuntary servitude for incarcerated persons. And then yes on Prop 32, which raises the minimum wage. And then yes on Prop 33, which is expanding rent control and repealing Costa-Hawkins. And then yes, or sorry, excuse me, no on Prop 34, which restricts spending of prescription drug revenues by certain healthcare providers. Thanks, Bruce. And then we took no position on Prop 35. And then for Prop 36, no on Prop 36, which allows felony charges and increase in sentences for certain drug and theft crimes. So just wanted to kind of re-put those out there and share those. So please take a look at the voice. And we won't be going into each of those specifically because we got a full packed meeting. So now I'm gonna turn it over to Carla Gonzalez with the Northern California, who's a Northern California organizer for the Yes on Prop 33 campaign and Prop 33, the Justice for Renters Act, to help us strengthen rent control and repeal Costa-Hawkins. And so I think Bruce will probably be pulling up those slides momentarily, and I'll pass it over to Carla. Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for having me here. And while we get the slides up, I want to introduce myself and a little bit of my background and why I got into organizing specifically around housing affordability. Again, my name is Carla, and I grew up in the South Bay. I grew up in Sunnyvale. I went to school at SF State. I studied anthropology. And then during my junior year there, I started volunteering at a free student-run clinic where we saw primarily uninsured patients, undocumented patients, and patients who, for whatever reason, faced structural barriers to receiving adequate health care. And so we give our patients, we're still up and running, but with election stuff, I haven't been able to volunteer. The patients receive free healthcare, free medicine. We created a food program where folks are taking food home through a program called Food is Medicine, and making sure that our patients' needs are taken care of, not just their medical needs, but also their social needs. But the one that time and time again we kept running into and we keep running into has to do with housing. So many of the times our patients just cannot receive adequate health care. They cannot stick to their treatment plans because of housing instability, whether that's inhabitability issues or rising rents, whatever it may be. These are stressors, and folks just cannot afford to pay for medicine once we refer them out to either specialty services or their food or their rent or childcare, whatever it may be. So then I turned to organizing around housing rights and saying, okay, what can we do to protect tenants? And that's where I met the bane of my existence, which is Costa-Hawkins. If y'all aren't familiar with it, what Costa-Hawkins is a current state law that bans rent control expansions on any buildings that are built after 1995. And I'll get into a little bit more of that. But once we're helping tenants and they come with issues that their rents are increasing by $100, $200, $300 a month sometimes, and people just cannot afford to pay it. They are getting evicted without just cause. So many reasons, and we just couldn't do much more to help because of Costa-Hawkins, because of this law that bans rent control, again, on buildings built after 1995, and leaves so many renters, not only in San Francisco, but in California, without any sort of safety net. So that's why when the opportunity came to join organizing around Prop 33, I really feel like this is a time that we can do it. I really think that we can pass it and say yes to protecting our tenants. So the next slide, please. Oh. So again, we know that there are 17 million renters in California. I don't know what the exact number, that one might not be super updated, but 3.2 million Californians are rent burdened, which means that they are spending more than 30% of their income on rent, and that is just not sustainable. It is hard to plan around rising rent if you don't know what you are going to be paying from 1 month to the next, or from 1 month and 2 months out. It becomes impossible to plan. You cannot afford an emergency. You cannot afford getting sick. You cannot afford your car breaking down. You cannot afford even the loss of a loved one. You have seen so many GoFundMes of people because these costs are just astronomical, and we are still struggling to pay the rent. A current rate of 40% of the unhoused population are folks over 50, and that is also including people who are homeless for the first time. So this is just, impacting folks across all different levels, and impacting folks disproportionately. Also, we see that Black and Latina households are the most affected by this disparity. And so I am sure you have all heard mixed things about what Prop 33 is, but Prop 33 is really a very simple ballot measure. What it does is that it will remove the current state ban on rent control expansions on buildings after 1995. So what this would do is that it would allow local communities the power to stop these corporate predatory landlords from increasing these rates, these rents astronomically month to month or year to year. It would bring the control back to local governments. Next slide, please. So again, it's a very simple ballot measure, despite what some of y'all may have heard. It is literally only 23 words, and it says the state may not limit the right of any city, county, or city and county to maintain, enact, or expand residential rent control. So nothing in the proposition says anything about stopping developments, about stopping affordable housing, building affordable housing, nothing. It simply means that the state cannot say to, you know, for example, here in San Francisco, it cannot tell us you can't impose rent control. So that really is what Proposition 33 is about. Next slide, please. Okay, so again, Costa-Hawkins, in addition to limiting rent control on buildings built after 1995, if you live in a if you rent in a single family home or in a condo, you also do not qualify for rent control protection. Passing Prop 33 would allow each city, each county or municipality, whatever it may be, to decide what a rent control best fits them. So it would open the conversation between property owners and tenants at that city level to decide what works best, because what is going to work best for us here in San Francisco is not going to work, for example, in the Central Valley or in other agricultural places in California. For example, we did a town hall in Salinas, and these are the people who put food on our table. Quite literally, they are the people who feed our family, picking fruit and picking vegetables, whatever it may be. They are seeing their rents skyrocket from $1,200 a month, which is, you know, already for a family who's literally getting cents for what they pick, to $3,200 in a month. It is incredible that this is allowed to just happen, right? And then the picking season, I'm not sure if y'all are aware, but it ends in October. So from the month of October to April, there are people who are left without any safety net and any way of paying their rent. So people are getting evicted unfairly. And again, these are the people who are taking care of us. These are the people who are putting food on our table. So with passing Prop 33, it is going to allow us at the city level to have these discussions about imposing rent control so that this does not happen. Again, with expanding rent control, our communities are going to be able to stay together. I grew up in Sunnyvale, but I would come to San Francisco a lot. And I have like one friend who still lives here. Everyone else had to move, and she lives at her parents' house. We're like 25, 26, and 27, and we cannot start our lives because we are too busy paying for rent. We are working 18-hour days. We are working side gigs. It is just not affordable. We cannot have any roots. And so what Prop 33 would do, again, in allowing us to expand rent control, it would allow for more communities to remain in the cities that we love, in the homes where we grew up, without having to move out. As I'm sure y'all are aware also, many people had to leave the Bay Area. What we're hearing time and time again is that even the people who have left the Bay Area for more affordable cities are seeing the same trends. Again, in San Joaquin Valley, in Kern County, all these places where it used to be more affordable to go, it is just not anymore. This is happening all over California. Like, people cannot afford to live in their homes. So where will we go? It's going to, again, prevent displacement. People will not have to leave their communities. We know that communities, when you have roots somewhere, our neighborhoods are safer, there's longevity. It's just literally so crucial to having a human connection. Like, you need to have roots somewhere, you need to have roots with your people. It's going to prevent homelessness, as we saw the rate of the population that is homeless is just increasing. And then we see here in San Francisco, the folks who are having to live in RVs, then London Breed comes and sweeps them away. Where will all our people go? Like, this is our time to say that enough is enough. Like, we just cannot keep this going. And so one of the arguments, again, against Prop 33 is saying that it's going to stop affordable housing, which is just not true, because we see that the need is urgent and it is immediate and we need it right now. And there's no development that is going to be able to move fast enough at the rates of what we need right now. So who opposes Prop 33? Who is behind those shiny ads of people in their cars leaving and sad? Like, again, the argument is that we are against affordable housing, and we are not. This is not true. The folks who are behind those ads and who are funneling, I just saw today, it's $88 million into these advertisements, into squashing Prop 33, are the California Apartments Association, the California Association of Realtors, which are organizations that are for big billionaire corporate developers and realtors, hiding behind the guise of being small mom and pop landlords to sympathize, to play at people's fears about their property rates, about what's going to happen to their taxes, what's going to happen to their expenses, which again is just not the case. We are trying to tackle the big corporate landlords who, like Veritas and those buildings, these big corporate landlords who are charging so much money for rent. And recently, I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before, but Gavin Newsom came and sided with the billionaire landlords, and he endorsed no on Prop 33. So it is not an easy battle, but it is a battle worth fighting. And the way that the status quo is just clearly not working with people. And this election is really our time to be able to change that. So ways to get involved. Oh, next slide, please. So having, you know, sessions like this where we're sharing information, talking to your neighbors, talking to your family, dispelling those fears and explaining again what it really is. It's just very simple. It just simply means that each city should have the right to decide what rent control measure is best for them. So we are going to be having a Unity Lit drop with other folks on the progressive slate, and that is going to be on October 26th. So if anyone here is interested, if anybody here knows somebody who would want to go, please, you have my contact information. Y'all can let me know. It is just a lit drop. We will not be talking to people. It's just going to be handing out flyers. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have donuts. We're going to have snacks. It's going to be a big group of us going out and just handing the literature. You can learn more on yeson33.org. If you would like to volunteer, we have, again, these town halls where we are calling different counties across California, basically having sessions like this. We are seeing maybe 2,000 to 3,000 people per call. We need folks who can answer or collect folks' questions during these town halls, if that's something that some of y'all might be interested in. And again, just through word of mouth, there's a lot of stuff that we can share on social media, a lot of stuff that we can share with our loved ones, with our families, with our neighbors. Again, they don't have to live in San Francisco. Prop 33 is a statewide measure. So this is going to be on the ballot, is on the ballot. They just dropped for everyone. So, and our office is, I don't know if y'all are aware, it's on 1630 Haight. So it's right out of Dean Preston's office. We have lawn signs, we have window signs, we've got leaflets, any information, y'all can stop by. Yeah, thank you so much. Are there any questions?
Great, thank you. Yeah, any folks have any questions? Here, let me engage. Yeah.
I'm not sure I got the 1630 or 33 Haight.
1630.
It's Dean Preston's office.
Yes.
Do you have a phone number for folks who don't have easy access or any access online?
I can give my phone number. Yeah. Yeah, I can. Okay, 408. Oh, yeah. My phone number is 408 835 3722. 3722. Carla. Mhm. Yes, Gonzalez. Mhm.
And where is the drop happening? Can we just show up Saturday from 10 to 2? Where?
It is at a specific location. I'll send out those details also. We do have a meeting point. It is from 10 to 2 on the 26th. If you can only come 10 to 11, if that's all you can do, doesn't matter. If you can come 11 to 1, whatever folks are able to do. But again, it really is just about showing the strength in numbers. But I will get that information to David. Mm-hmm. Oh, Dubose Park. Thank you. Dubose Park.
Folks have other questions?
So just a clarification, yeah, Costa Hawkins did say no rent control for buildings built after 1995, but for cities that already had rent control, it goes back to what they had. So for San Francisco, it's anything after June
76.
1978, I think,
Oh,
79.
79.
Yeah, Los Angeles is a year earlier.
Mhm.
And the San Francisco Board of Supervisors on Tuesday passed a resolution that would extend rent control up through 1994 if Prop 33 passes.
Yes. Yeah.
And that was a compromise.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And I think there's gonna be a second round of that next week. Nate, do you know when that's gonna be? If y'all want to give public comments on that day too.
There is another second vote on it on Tuesday at 2:00 at the Board of Supervisors. You're welcome to come and give a public comment actually, if you want. On the expansion of rent control locally. Sure.
The Board of Supervisors, yes, as Richard said, passed, at the end of the day, there was a lot of foot dragging and nonsense, but they ultimately passed it unanimously when they were forced to vote on it. And it is a compromise and one that everyone said they agreed on, but then really didn't want to vote on it. However, they did vote for it, and it's going for a second vote next week on Tuesday, the 15th at 2:00. And because it's a special meeting, there is public comment. And if you'd like to come express your support for rent control or otherwise, please do so.
Thank you so much.
Other questions? Sure. You have another question?
I have a friend who claims, and it seemed from one ad that I did see on Channel 5, that maybe this claim was being made by advertisement that Prop 33 would enable reduction, force or at least enable reductions in rent control protections or rent control laws. And I'm wondering if you've heard that or where that might have come from. It sounds, to my understanding, it's completely wrong, but I'm wondering if that's an argument the other side is making and what one might say about that.
Sorry, just to clarify that I got your question right. So they're saying that this would weaken current rent control protections? Is that what
That's what I understand, a
Okay.
friend having understood
Okay.
about
yes.
33. It's not my understanding,
Mhm.
but I did hear an ad that talked about 100 municipalities that could or would have rent controls weakened or gotten rid of. Basically, they're trying to make an argument that would make pro rent control people vote against their own interests.
Yes. Yeah.
But I'm not sure what they're saying and how they're contriving that at all.
Yes, I don't know if this is where the misunderstanding is coming from, but I think that what the opposing side is kind of saying that in repealing, again, Costa-Hawkins, it's automatically going to remove the current protections that are in place, which again is not the case. Like it will not do that. Those protections will remain. What it is going to do, it is that it's going to allow for an expansion. There is no, again, the language is very simple. There's nothing there about repealing any current protections. Those will stay intact. Nothing in Proposition 33 states that those are going to be taken away. Just simply, again, states that the state cannot limit the expansions. Like it cannot limit the city's ability to enact rent control, but there's nothing there about these protections being taken away. And so again, that is an argument that's being used to pander to people's fears that like, oh, if we repeal this, then all of these protections that, you know, we've worked hard for are going to go away, which again is simply not the case. And before Costa-Hawkins was enacted, each city was able to enact its own rent control, for example, like in Santa Monica, and in other cities. And the reason that these big corporate landlords, I think it was the CAA who was actually behind Costa-Hawkins, is because it was working. It's because it was working for each city to decide. So these rent control protections that are currently in place will not be going away. They will simply be allowed to expand if that's how the city decides it should be. I hope that clears it up. Awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool.
Thanks so much. Yeah, thank you so much, Charlotte. Yeah, it was great to have you here. And yeah, this is, as you clearly laid out, an extremely important measure. So we're glad to have you here and help, you know, boost it. And it's important that, you know, we do everything we can to pass it. So appreciate you coming, and we got your contact info and some event details up there on the board. So thanks again.
Yeah,
so
and
much.
I could follow up in an email just so you have that and can spread it out. And again, if folks are interested, please come. We're literally just going to be going out dropping flyers. Super important that we all show up. And if you want window signs, yard signs, whatever, please come to the office. We have plenty. So
Great.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Great. So next up, we have Doug Engman with the Prop E campaign, and Prop E is creating a task force to recommend changing, eliminating, or combining city commissions. So yes, we're very happy to be joined by Doug, and I'll just go ahead and pass it over to you.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be here. I was mentioning, I think it's been maybe 35 years since I was at my last HANC meeting, back when we were fighting for our homes, which St. Mary's wanted to take and demolish for their medical office building in the mid 70s, which is when I first met Calvin Welch. I organized the Stanton Fulton Street Neighborhood Association north of the Panhandle. In order to do that, we worked very closely with HANC, and memories never fade. And I really appreciate HANC's support at that time for someone who was just entering city politics and trying to fight City Hall. Seems like we have to fight City Hall again and again and again, but it's always for good causes. And I'm here to talk about Proposition E. I am a former commissioner on the Board of Permit Appeals and the Planning Commission. Served 15 years, must have heard 10,000 cases of a whole variety of permits and planning issues. And I want to thank HANC for their No on D endorsement that they did a couple of months ago. HANC was the first neighborhood group to take a position on Proposition D. And since then, there have been a couple of dozen other neighborhood groups. The Coalition for San Francisco Neighborhoods, Neighborhoods United, have gotten on board to fight this really disastrous proposition. And I don't want to talk too much about it, except Prop D represents probably the greatest transfer of power from the people in the neighborhoods to City Hall and the mayor that's maybe ever happened in this city. Now, I'm not a San Francisco historian, so I can't tell you what happened during the gold rush, but at least in modern times. And it was done in a way that you would never make public policy. Some very rich billionaire who's decided he wants to run the city the way he sees it, put up $7 million to the group Together San Francisco, who wrote this initiative in secret, which abolishes 22 city commissions, including the library, arts, historic preservation, the health commission, and a couple of dozen others, and then puts a cap on the number of commissions we can have in the city to 65, where we have about 115 functioning now. And then gives all the power for the mayor to appoint without review of the board. I mean, it's really a terrible, terrible proposition. And I'm sure, I don't know whether Prop D flyers have hit your mailbox with Mark Farrell on one side and Yes on D on the others, because he's using their funds to run for mayor, which is probably illegal, but certainly unethical. And they're spending their money, and they've done TV ads, which some of you may have seen, which depict San Francisco city commissions as 12 white older men in blue suits and red ties, remind you of something now, running the commissions, falling asleep, eating, smoking. I mean, really maligns the hundreds of commissioners who do hard work in this city. I mean, it's a terrible, terrible campaign. So you might think, well, why not let's just make sure we can defeat Prop D. I mean, the fact that they have $4 million in the campaign and we have about 70,000 is a little daunting. And the fact they're willing to run a very Trumpian campaign in order to get it passed is a bit scary. But as Calvin knows, we've been in this position before, being outspent. In the 80s, for example, in Prop M, when we were outspent 100 to 1 and Prop M won, we can do it. But we need to have Prop E because there is a certain sentiment in the city that the city isn't working as well as it used to. And we can't deny that. There is that sentiment out there, whether it's, as Supervisor Peskin says, you know, you can't take the view that the city is doomed like a lot of the press is. We live in a great city. We've been through ups and downs. Our citizens know how to bounce back, and it is bouncing back a little bit, and we can fix our problems. But the last time the city charter was reviewed was 1996, close to 30 years ago. And certainly we've added, you know, 2 or 3 dozen new commissions. Some commissions don't have departments anymore. So the Sanitation and Streets Commission, which had a Sanitation and Streets Division department, the department doesn't exist, but the commission still existed. So there are things that need to be reviewed and looked at, and ways to maybe have our commissions work better. The civil grand jury did a study that recommended a task force to review the commissions, look at their cost effectiveness, how well they're being running, and then take that to the Board of Supervisors and the voters if there are changes in the charter that need to be made. And SPUR, which is not my favorite organization, had a similar sort of recommendation, but nothing like what Prop D is doing, which is some group of 3 or 4 people decide that we don't need the Arts Commission, the Library Commission, whatever, and put that on the ballot. It's, you go through a public process, you analyze what works, what doesn't work, what can be merged, and then you make your changes. And that's what Prop E does. Prop E is the proper way for us to review the functions of our city government and our commissions. And what it does, it enables a city task force that gives it, I think, 18 months to review the commissions, look at the studies that have already been done, hear from the public, and decide if there are any changes in the commission structure that need to be made. And then it presents that to the Board of Supervisors, but it also has the power to put it on the ballot if the Board of Supervisors doesn't put it on the ballot on time. And that way, we can start to look at how our city government's operating and how our commissions are operating in the way change should be made in San Francisco, out in the open, debated, voted on by our legislators, and then voted on by the public at the time those recommendations come out. But I have another, we'll call it insidious reason why we need to do this, is the billionaire that's funded all this has a plan, been published, of taking over the city government. Not only by eliminating our commissions, which is where we engage with our bureaucracy and the public. Next is district elections. He wants to repeal district elections. Next is he wants to reduce, change, merge. We're not really sure how nonprofits work in the city. And as we know, nonprofits are a key component of providing services in the city. And then finally, he wants to give the mayor more power with a charter amendment that goes back to the way Joe Aliotta ran the city, with deputy mayors who have more power over the bureaucracy. If D wins and he loses, they're going to be emboldened. These are going to come at us like crazy with a lot of money behind it. If he wins and D loses, we show them that the power of the people is greater than the power of the money that go behind it. And if both pass and E gets the most votes, E triumphs, and we have a better way of going through rather than what D is proposing, a process that makes sense. We have to stop this now, because if we don't stop it now, it's going to keep coming. And that's why it's so important for you to spread the word. A lot of people don't understand what D does or E does, but it's basically reforming our commissions the right way in E and the wrong way in D. And just say that the public will understand why it's important to retain our democratic institutions in the city. So that's my pitch, and I'm pitching hard.
Okay, thank you, Doug. Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah. Maybe we'll open it up for some questions.
Any questions?
Maybe we'll see online if there's anyone first. I think I see Kristen, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Kristen is working with us on yes on E, no on D.
It's been a real pleasure to work with Doug and Margaret and Ed and some amazing other commissioners and former commissioners on the No on D and Yes on E campaign. And I just wanted to highlight the organization name again, Together SF Action. This is Michael Moritz's nonprofit that has a plan to take over San Francisco. And you might be familiar with them in other ways, because they would post signs in the hate for trash pickups, or advertise house parties to learn about how governance works. And people didn't really know that they were signing up for Michael Moritz's, right-wing plan. But over the last 2 years, they've accumulated, I think, some 55,000 emails. A lot of young people that are civically minded and civically engaged, who had no idea that they were being harvested by Together SF. And now they're receiving slate mailers and being encouraged to attend house parties where they would complete their ballots together with Together SF's slate card in hand. So I just wanted to highlight that particular organization has really creeped in all over the city. And it's really important that we help raise awareness to our neighbors that may have not caught on to that yet. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Kristen. Yeah, we got a couple. Here, I saw Alice.
Hi, thank you very much for an excellent talk. And I wondered if in publicity, to help voters remember there are so many different props, you could say Prop E for excellence and perhaps Prop D for diabolical, just to help us remember. And also, I wondered if you have written an article about this or even submitted something to the Chronicle, not that they would be amenable to it, but really what you revealed was very, very interesting. And I think people, if they knew the information that you
Yeah,
presented, it would be great.
Again, our issue is we have the right message, it's getting it out. And as I say, $70,000 doesn't allow you to mail even a quarter of the city. So there is an op-ed. I've written an op-ed that will, I've been promised, appear in the Examiner. And I can actually email it to Hank and it can be circulated among your members if you'd like. And other members of our team have met with the Chronicle and we think they're going to be sympathetic, but we're waiting to see how they come out. We have a couple of op-eds submitted to the Chronicle as well. I don't know whether they'll publish them or not. I do have some flyers that we have here that you can look at and distribute to your friends. I've left it on the table, but I will send out the op-ed. As for yes is for excellence, D is for diabolical, I'll turn that over to our media expert, Kristen, who's in charge of the media challenge. We are going to have a press conference, or at least a press release, because if any of you has seen these ads, I mean, literally, I wanted to throw up when I saw them because they really depict our commissioners in such a misogynical and diabolical way that it's embarrassing. To portray in an ad that, you know, all the commissioners are older white men who have Trumpian leanings, when in fact the city shows that 55% of city commissioners are female and close to 55% are people of color and 14% are disabled. So we have a really diverse, great mix of commissioners in the city. And for them to try and just to win an election to portray us any other way is really terrible.
Thank you. Is there anyone on Zoom? Do we have any questions? You can unmute yourself if no. Okay, then we'll go back to the room.
Yes, first of all, yes, I certainly agree with your position. I guess I have two comments. One is my experience of the main commission that I've been following for more than 20 years is not very positive in the sense of independence, but it is an opportunity for the public to observe and watch and also comment on decisions that they're making, such as budgets, which they have to every year approve and presumably discuss and so on and so forth. That's the Library Commission. They're all appointed, the library commissioners and the city librarian are all appointed by the mayor already. But whether or not they have as much power as I wish they actually did have, they are an opportunity for the public to arrive and express itself and to make common cause in some cases over the years. It seems to me kind of shocking that some of the commissions that are on the top of the list are ones that deal in agencies that have a lot of public interface, you know, the Health Commission, the Library Commission, the Arts Commission. Those are commissions that deal with the public a lot. My question for you is, you haven't mentioned Prop D or a position on Prop D, and is it not important to vote no on Prop D? I call it Prop D for dog. And yes on Prop E, because as you said, the one with the larger, is it the larger overall votes or the larger number of votes in favor of its passage? And isn't it important to vote down Prop D as well as vote up Prop E?
Well, obviously, no on D, yes on E. If they both pass by 50%, the proposition with the greatest number of votes is the one that prevails. So if now there's some tricky language in Prop D that the city attorney is going to have to figure out that says, well, if they lose, then certain provisions that are not prevented by Prop E might go into effect. I've never seen that happen in a proposition. But yes, you want to defeat D and you want to pass E. That's the message we want to give to them. If somehow Prop D passes because they're spending $4 million, then let's make sure Prop E passes by at least one more vote so that it doesn't get implemented and our process does get implemented.
Great. Well, yeah, thank you, Doug.
Thank you very
We're,
much.
We really
Appreciate
appreciate
it.
you coming and
Great to be back.
laying out the importance of yes on E, no on D.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's very clear. So thank you. Next, we have Meg Heisler with the yes on Prop G campaign. And Prop G is titled Funding Rental Subsidies for Affordable Housing Development Serving Low-Income Seniors, Families, and Persons with Disabilities. So, yeah, please. So yes, we're very glad that you could join us, Meg. Thank you for coming.
Sure.
And we got your slides up ready to go.
Oh, wow,
So
that's huge.
yeah,
Okay.
let's go ahead and pass it over to you.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name's Meg Heisler. I'm super pleased to be here. I have been working on affordable housing and community development policy for a number of years now and made this, sorry, my switch over to this campaign after working on the legislation for about a year and a half. And so the Proposition G will create the Affordable Housing Opportunity Fund, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, which is responsive to a very specific problem with our affordable housing system, which is that as it currently exists, the affordable housing that we're working so hard to build is not actually affordable for folks who are making below 50 or 60% of the area median income. And this is for a number of reasons, not least of which is that is how we underwrite and finance affordable housing. And it's very difficult to reach deeper levels of affordability without additional subsidy. And federal state subsidies are either fully used up or oversubscribed or disappearing. So there is a real need for us to create a local program to meet this need. And if you're familiar with the housing element process, as you know, challenging that is, or however you want to describe it, we do have a goal. In San Francisco, we opted into a goal that was not required by the state to build 13,981 units of extremely low income housing in the next 7 years now. So this is also responsive to that goal. So the measure will establish a fund that the city will be required to allocate $8.25 million a year to over the next 20 years. It is very much sort of an expansion and to make permanent the senior operating subsidy program, which was won in 2019 by a coalition, including the Community Tenants Association, Senior and Disability Action, and Faith in Action, which created this sort of a program for seniors specifically. And so this Prop G would make that program permanent and also expand it to working families and people with disabilities. Let me just make sure. It will lower rents in our pipeline of affordable housing, and 20% is also eligible to be used for existing housing. It also can apply to the city's small sites or preservation program. So if we want to think about that as a true anti-displacement program, when the city and nonprofit housers acquire existing rent-controlled housing, then we have to be able to subsidize the rents in those to reach folks who are really at risk of displacement. And so this would also do that. Sorry, would you mind putting that? Just make sure I covered everything. Yeah, and so and then I'll just add that with extremely low income, we're talking about folks who are at 30% AMI and below. So for one person, that's around $31,000 a year, and it scales up slightly depending on the number of people in each household. So it's really folks who are working minimum wage jobs or are on fixed incomes. All right. And this is just some data from the city that shows our affordable housing production since 2005 and how a relatively small slice of the affordable housing we've built is actually affordable to folks in these income ranges. And an additional piece of data that we got from OCD is that over 80% of the folks who are working with housing counselors in the city are self-reporting as extremely low income and unable to access most of our affordable housing. And I'll just, I guess, close with this picture and a list of some of our supporters, which has not been updated in a minute. But and then one last thing, which is that a lot of the main concern that we've heard in response to this measure is that we're in a tough moment. The city's in a tough moment economically. Is it really a good time to be setting aside a portion of the budget for something like this? And two things I'll say about that. The first is that we very specifically outlined in the measure sources other than the city's general fund to meet this required allocation. So existing housing revenue sources could meet this requirement, help the city meet this requirement. And the second thing is that plenty of folks who are historically opposed to set-asides are supportive of this measure because they know that it's critically important. And that includes our sponsor, Supervisor Peskin, and also SPUR, who recently endorsed the measure, in addition to a number of community organizations, affordable housers, et cetera. So I will end there.
Thank you. Yeah, we can open up for questions folks have. Here, let me grab you. I'll bring the mic over so the people on Zoom can hear you.
That's me.
I have a question. Will there be a lottery to get into these places?
Yeah, so it will fold into the existing affordable housing program. So folks would apply via Dahlia, which is the city's portal for affordable housing.
And my final question is, why is seniors put in the seniors, young adults, and adults all put in the same category? They're all they're all in a lottery to get housing, and seniors are very vulnerable. And why are they put in that category to compete to get housing?
So I think explain pieces of that. So we build units, affordable housing units that are specifically designated for seniors. In that case, seniors would not be competing against younger folks because they would not be eligible for those units.
I follow you. I thank you for your clarification because I was having a hard time with that because I am a senior and you're competing with all these diverse issues and communities, and we are the vulnerable population. And a lot of us can't even speak up for ourselves, and we have to compete for housing, and if we don't get picked and out in the cold, how does that work?
We're not building enough of it. I think that's the main answer. We don't have enough affordable housing specifically for seniors. So the wait lists are quite long, and that's not including the full population of folks who need affordable housing. Like the wait lists for senior housing is alone, those are quite long. I know there was a project on Geary that just had its open for applications, and they have, I believe, thousands of people on the wait list. So this will not solve the problem, but at the very least, we will be able to offer units that have much lower rents so that more folks are eligible for the units that we are building.
So this is what I'm hearing. We're not in competition with the adults and young adults, seniors. I'm speaking about seniors. Seniors are in a different lottery. Is
Yeah,
that
we have a specific housing type for seniors. So in the affordable housing lottery, a senior would apply for those units, and someone who's younger would not be eligible. They would not be able to apply because they don't qualify based on their age.
I follow you and I thank you.
Kristen, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say from the homelessness system perspective, we've seen the data showing now that the fastest growing demographic of people experiencing homelessness are people over the age of 50 who have never been homeless before in many cases. And this aging, gray wave, plus the combination of the rising rents and the inability of the social security checks to keep up with the rent has created this crisis.
Agreed. Thank you, Kristen. Other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
It's a very complicated issue. I have trouble sorting it out, but I've certainly heard reports repeatedly that the mayor has refused to implement monies that have already been allocated for affordable housing. Just ignored the fact there is a pot of money, or maybe more than one pot of money, that could be alleviating to some degree the crisis that especially seniors are experiencing in affordable housing. Now, if this passes, would this fall into that category or that role and just ignore what the voters have approved?
So there's money in the last few years. There's been money from the general fund that's been allocated to housing programs that hasn't been actually spent on housing programs. This money is being pulled into a separate fund and it can't be taken out. So I suppose it could be ignored, but it can't go anywhere else. We have limited tools, I think, to force it to be spent, but at the very least, it can't be repurposed. So that's how we're trying to work around that issue.
Folks have other questions in the room? Go ahead, Nate.
Who's against this measure? Which kinds of diabolical candidates or organizations?
So we have there's been no reported spending in opposition to this measure. The only opposition in the voter guide is Larry Marceau, an individual who IDs as a Republican. And other than that, we've had, some of the Democratic clubs have opted to oppose. United Dems, Alice B. Toklas, and then Grow SF and Together SF have said no. But that's kind of the extent of it. And on the other side, we have, the local Democratic Party, the mayor, the full board of supervisors. We very much thought of it as a consensus measure going into the campaign. Like as soon as it got on the ballot, that's not exactly how it's panned out, but it is supported by all of the progressive folks you would expect to support it, and we're quite optimistic.
Great, thanks.
I'm just wondering how the number, it looked like 550 to slightly larger number of folks would be helped by this fund. Is that correct? And how did those numbers come from? They seem to me for the 821,000 or so residents of the city, it seems like a small number.
Yeah. So
Want to vote against it, just that I'm wondering, it seems like a low number.
yeah, so that's the number of, that's a very conservative estimate as to the number of units that would be supported by this. And that's over 20 years. So we have to, the rough estimate for the cost to subsidize one unit to a extremely low income rent for a year is around $12,000, $13,000. And in order to make that unit affordable at that level for the duration of, for the 20 years, we have to spend that every year to subsidize that unit. So that's why it's it'll be well over 550 people, households, etc. Once a household who wins the lottery and gets one of these units leaves that unit, it will remain affordable at that level until the fund sunsets in 20 years, or if we approve it again, then it'll continue. But it's based on MoCD's estimate that we need about $12,000 or $13,000 a year to subsidize each unit.
Great. Other questions, babe? I have one question I have is
Yeah, I think like the topic of meeting the needs, like the deepest needs of people in affordable housing comes up a lot. And so do you think this is like an opportunity also to like, could this open other doors or like help people think of how we can address kind of the needs of extremely low income folks, or help propel some momentum or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, certainly. So this is like, we're getting this program started with this measure, but it can receive unlimited funds. So if we wanted to grow the program in the future, we could certainly do so. If we have like a boom year and the Board of Supervisors wants to put more money into the fund via the regular budget process, they can do that as well. So it really is like a starting point to make sure that we are thinking about this particular need that's gone under, kind of flown under the radar for some time, and grow on this in the future.
Great, thank you. Well, thank you, so much for coming and joining and taking some time out on your Thursday night. And sharing more about Prop G. So yeah, definitely yes on Prop G. So thank you so much for joining us. Oh, if people want to get involved, how could they get involved?
I brought some of these guys, which I know we're not talking about Prop 5, but it has both.
And Hank did
and our
endorse
website,
Prop 5.
Oh, amazing. Also. And our website is on here, and my email address is on there.
Perfect.
Great.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
All right, so we're going to keep our marathon of proposition measure speakers going. So next up we have Prop L, and we have Kat Siegel with a yes on Prop L campaign. And Prop L is additional business tax on transportation network companies and autonomous vehicle businesses to fund public transportation, or the TNC tax, also how I remember it. So thanks so much for joining us, Kat, and I'll pass it to you.
Great. Yeah, thanks so much for having me back again. Good to see you all. I'm Kat. I am one of the proponents of Prop L to fund the bus. Also a Coal Valley resident, and I also represent District 5 on the County Transportation Authority Community Advisory Committee. Are we able to? I did have slides, but I can go without them if I'll just
probably have.
Prop L. But yeah, I can get started without the slides while those get pulled up. So the reason why we care about this is that Muni serves over 500,000 passenger trips every day. A lot of people don't quite realize the scale of the population that Muni serves. That includes over 20,000 trips to riders with disabilities every day and 30,000 trips to senior riders. So that's folks for whom Muni is their mobility lifeline. A lot of routes were suspended during the pandemic, and those people were cut off from transportation altogether. Unfortunately, also in good news, Muni has its highest rider satisfaction rating that it's had in 25 years. 71% of folks rate service as good or excellent. And it's been able to recover 76% of pre-pandemic ridership, despite that outpacing downtown recovery by quite a bit. It's doing a lot better than other agencies in the Bay Area, such as BART and Caltrain, and a lot of other agencies across the nation. You can skip 2 slides here. Thank you. Yeah, great. So unfortunately, SMTA is facing a $240 million operating deficit starting in 2026. And starting next year, it's actually facing about a $25 million operating deficit, which means that cuts will be coming to Muni service as early as next year without alternate funding identified. Next slide, please. Yeah, that's right. Great. Next slide, please. So Prop L on the November ballot would raise an estimated $25 million a year for Muni service, and it would specifically be reserved for operations. Conveniently, that's about how much the operating deficit of Muni is next year. And that's enough to protect over 10 bus lines. Next slide, please. So Prop L funding would be restricted to Muni operations, and it would specifically have to go to running, maintaining, or expanding Muni service, running the buses and trains and paratransit service, and funding the equity fare programs such as Free Muni for Youth and the discounted free fare programs for seniors, people with disabilities, and people with low incomes. Next slide, please. Oh, and it can't fund capital projects like bus lanes, bike lanes, infrastructure changes. So Prop L funding comes from a small business tax on ride-hail companies like Uber and Waymo. It would be a graduated gross receipts tax that starts at 1% and goes up to a max of 4.5% for companies that make over $25 million a year. Next slide, please. So when we were researching funding mechanisms for Muni, we realized that San Francisco actually has one of the lowest ride-hail tax rates today, and Prop L would bring it more in line with peer cities, but it would still be lower than Manhattan, Chicago, and DC. So this is a common sense change to right-size the tax. Next slide, please. So since I was last here, we qualified for the ballot by gathering signatures from over 17,000 San Francisco voters. Next slide, please. And while this is a progressive piece of legislation, it is also a common sense piece of legislation. So we've been broadly endorsed. Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi has endorsed most of the candidates for mayor, 10 out of 11 members of the Board of Supervisors. We've gotten onto a lot of great slates, as you can see. Next slide, please. And then a bunch of groups that don't normally agree on much, Labor Council, SEIU, Teamsters, TWU, Spur, San Francisco YIMBY, Sierra Club, and then some business groups like the Council of District Merchants Association and Small Business Forward. A bunch of neighborhood groups and merchants associations. HANC has endorsed Haight-Ashbury Merchants Association. So we're thrilled by the broad support. Next slide. So political headwinds, we are up against some of the wealthiest corporations in the city. Uber and Lyft have contributed almost $900,000 to the opposition campaign, and they are running misleading ads, particularly digital ads and mailers that say, like, don't tax my ride, with a photo of a bus that says it's out of service. It sort of implies that maybe we're taxing Muni. So, you know, not great. And also saying that this is like adding fees to riders or drivers. This is a business tax, so if you know, they can choose to pass it on to the rider or the driver, but it is not a fee. It is a business tax. Next slide, please. Another challenge that we're facing is that, unfortunately, there is an interaction between Prop L and Prop M, which is the business tax reform measure. Prop M has a broad conflict clause that says that any other gross receipts tax being altered, imposed, or repealed on the same ballot would be invalidated if Prop M gets more votes than that measure, and we are a measure that imposes a new gross receipts tax. So our measure actually would sit on top of the rest of the gross receipts tax code, so it doesn't actually have a legal conflict, but this conflict clause would nullify us if Prop M gets more votes. So we just need, it both can go into effect if Prop L gets more votes than Prop M. So not the reverse. So if Prop L and Prop M both get 50% of the vote, but Prop L gets more votes, then both can go into effect, and there's no actual legal conflict. So very confusing, but we're trying to make sure people are aware. And if you know, people want both to pass, they don't have to vote no on Prop M. They can also leave Prop M blank, and that would do just as much for Prop L. Next slide, please. So yeah, we're out almost every day talking to voters, having great conversations with voters about Muni funding. People love Muni, turns out. We're really like, we just need to be known. When we reach voters, it really resonates with them. And so, yeah, we're just a small guy that needs visibility. Next slide, please. So yeah, things you can do to get involved. We'd love to have you volunteer with us. You can learn more at fundthebus.com. I did bring a few window signs and some literature and buttons. And yeah, I think that's it. Any questions?
Great, thank you. Yeah, Nick.
Thank you for doing this, but I'm still very concerned about the, even if we should win this, how many bus lines will be cut with the deficit that we still are facing? Do you have an estimate of that?
No, I don't have an estimate of the scale of cuts that, so if no additional funding is found after 2025, the scale of the deficit implies about a 15 to 20% reduction in overall service. So that could look like, cuts to a dozen lines. That could look like severely scaled back hours or lower frequencies. It's unclear how S of MTA would reduce service. There is a funding working group that they've convened recently that is looking at various scenarios of like, where would they cut spending? What would the service gaps look like? But I don't know at this point what their plan is.
Who's on the funding working group?
There are mostly representatives from like the communities around the city, like who worked on like the bringing back the 31 Balboa during the pandemic. Chris Arvin, who's a transit advocate who's also working on Prop L, is on that working group. There's public information about it I can send you. I don't know who all is on it.
Yeah, please send it to Hank.
Yeah,
Thank you for
absolutely.
your work.
Got another question here.
Hi there. Thanks for your presentation. I am concerned about, I think the minimum that we need is Prop L. And yet there is a pretty strong campaign using lots of psychological tricks saying this is going to hurt seniors who use Uber and Lyft, and therefore you have to be against it. And there's the poison pill in Prop M. So I really would, I can see that not voting at all, or even voting no, the SF Bernie-crats have written that M would weaken the tax on overpaid CEOs and could prevent Prop L from taking effect. So I think that, I mean, I haven't studied it in depth, but from what I saw, it really would be a serious blow to Muni. And we worked really hard to get the number 6 bus put back after the pandemic. I wouldn't like to see it or any other bus line go again.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I live on the 6. I totally agree. Don't want to see it go away again. It's my favorite line. Yeah, we want people to be able to independently consider Prop M since it doesn't technically conflict with Prop L. And we just need more votes than Prop M, which is why we're recommending that if people want both to go into effect, that they abstain if they otherwise want Prop M to prevail. But the campaign doesn't have like an official position on M. Yeah.
Other questions or any on Zoom, any questions? Guess I have maybe a comment that, yeah, like considering how for Uber, part of their business model is to pull people off of public transportation and into private ride shares. Like they've actually, it's been like come out in public documents that that's like part of their business model, that it only makes sense, especially in San Francisco, where the San Francisco has the transit first policy, to tax part of them to offset their intentional business model of getting people off of Muni. It seems like at a minimum, put a higher tax to fund Muni. It seems like a pretty big like no brainer to me.
Yeah.
And I was just saw, I think I missed part of the slide, but other cities have existing taxes and.
Yes. Yeah. So San Francisco also has an existing per ride excise tax of 3.25%, but that's much lower than many other cities. We're currently lower than I think any other major city over 500,000 population that taxes ride hail, and we would still be lower than New York, Chicago, or DC if this does go into effect. Yeah.
Maybe it's because we gave birth to it. It feels harder to tax.
Maybe.
Yeah. Well, yeah, well, thank you so much for coming and really appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for joining us again.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me again.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
and so there's materials if people want to get involved, they can check it out. Yeah, thank you. All right, so last but not least, we're joined by Ryan Kojaste, who's running for DA to talk about some of his policy positions. And we also invited the current DA, Brooke Jenkins, who will also be on the ballot. And just want to state again, HANC does not endorse candidates running for office, but we offer equal opportunity for all those running to come and speak. And again, DA Brooke Jenkins declined, but Ryan is here joining us. So thanks for joining us, Ryan.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Well, hello, everybody. Good evening. My name is Ryan Kojaste. I am a career prosecutor running for San Francisco District Attorney, and I'm very grateful to have this opportunity to introduce myself to all of you. Unlike my opponent, I never turned down an opportunity to introduce myself to my neighbors and answer tough questions. In fact, she's turned down every single opportunity to either engage in a forum, debate me, or present at the same time as me, which I find deeply problematic. So I'm running for San Francisco District Attorney because I think we can achieve a better way on public safety here in San Francisco. I have worked in 2 different district attorney's offices, San Francisco District Attorney's Office as an assistant district attorney, where I worked first with kids at juvenile hall to get them back on track with educational opportunities, treatment opportunities, mentorship, and safe housing, because I recognize that if you help a child before it's too late, you save their life and it makes all of us safer. I was then promoted to handle violent and serious crimes here at the Hall of Justice. I prosecuted attempted murder, arson, domestic violence, armed robbery, residential burglaries, drug dealing, you name it. And I handled my cases with ethics and integrity, and also recognized that we have to have a balance in our justice system. Some people have to go to jail and prison. Other people can get treatment, and we have to do both. I was then unfortunately fired by the current district attorney for reasons never given to me. But recently she told CBS Bay Area that she got rid of all these people because of their personal belief system, which is actually unlawful and not a way to run an office when you are responsible of supporting almost 300 employees. I then went to work at the Alameda County District Attorney's Office, where I first worked in our treatment courts, deciding who gets treatment and who doesn't. And we want to make sure that we're expanding those opportunities when appropriate. I then prosecuted parole and probation violations, holding people accountable for violating their terms of release. And I also work with victims to secure restitution. So I've seen lots of different sides of a DA's office. I am the only candidate in this race that has experience on both the punishment side of the justice system, but also the treatment and rehabilitative side of the criminal justice system. And I was asked by the community to run for district attorney because of the disastrous regime of Brooke Jenkins. In the 2 years she's been in office, 130 employees have left. That's almost half of the entire staff, which is unprecedented. They have personally told me that there has been mismanagement, nepotism, and a chaotic work environment. A great example of this is the fact that she hired her personal high school best friend, who has no legal experience, is not a lawyer, has no criminal justice experience, to be the chief of staff, the #2 position in the DA's office, while she has a second job making over $400,000 a year. That's actual corruption right there. And we actually just found out recently, and it should be reported in the news soon, that they are so mismanaged that they forgot to apply for a state grant for victim services. So for 3 weeks, they had to furlough their staff, and there was no victim services processing restitution claims in all of San Francisco County. Under the current DA, they have lost the vast majority of trials. We recently got data from the Public Defender's Office that under Brooke Jenkins' tenure, The DA's office has lost 93% of all domestic violence cases at trial, 80% of every DUI case, 73% of homicides and manslaughters. They have the lowest conviction rate in the state. And because of an inability to manage the backlog of criminal cases in San Francisco, because of COVID, the courts shut down, cases accumulated. And part of our job is to manage the criminal justice system. Because Brooke Jenkins has gotten rid of collaborative and treatment courts in our city, declined those referrals by over 70%, has gotten rid of diversion programs by up to 68%. When you're filling up our courts, when we have limited courtroom space, with not enough prosecutors or court staff to actually see them through, they get dismissed. That's the law. If you can't meet a deadline to prosecute a case, it's gone. It's not the judge's fault. It's the DA who chooses what cases come in. So while Jenkins has been DA, almost 3,000 cases have been dismissed. Victims who've never seen justice at all. That's not tough on crime. That's just pure bad politics at the expense of public safety. So I'm running for this job to stabilize the office. My job is to be a responsible and collaborative department manager. A good manager supports their staff so they can be the best they can be. Not a hostile work environment where you're demoting qualified people, firing qualified people, and bringing in your political allies and personal friends who have no business being in that job. I personally went to court a couple weeks ago, and what Jenkins did is she demoted 6 experienced felony prosecutors and brought in 6 brand new attorneys to take over their violent cases when they had been lawyers for only 8 months. So I went to court on their first day and cases were being dismissed, violent people were being released, even the judges and police officers were confused. Why is this happening? San Francisco deserves a DA who is committed to working for the people, not their political base. We need to run an office well because everyone is frustrated with public safety. Right now in San Francisco, we have a record rate of storefront vacancies. Businesses are leaving. 3 people a day are dying of overdose in San Francisco. People feel less safe, crime is underreported, and we need a DA who recognizes that if we can pursue treatment, rehabilitation, and accountability, we can make a meaningful difference. We should partner with our school district. We should partner with service providers and community-based organizations. We should proactively advocate for more affordable housing, more funding for residential treatment. We can do all of these things and make us safer. But instead, we are going back to failed Republican policies of mass incarceration, of the war on drugs, of charging kids as adults. And what's happened? Nobody feels safer. In fact, 78% of San Franciscans, according to Cron 4, believe that under Jenkins, crime hasn't changed. She only has a 35% approval rate. So there's a reason she won't come here to answer questions about her terrible record because she can't defend it. And her only defense is, well, Ryan is Chesa 2.0. That's a weak distraction and a pivot away from her poor performance as the district attorney of San Francisco. So it's a 2-way race. Brooke Jenkins, district attorney, Ryan Kojaste, deputy district attorney. And I am so glad that I have earned the support of over 10 Democratic clubs in our city, 8 labor unions, the vast majority of endorsing groups in San Francisco, teachers, nurses, doctors, healthcare workers, bus drivers, construction workers, government employees, even the union representing court staff is supporting me because they feel like Brooke Jenkins is severely mismanaging cases in San Francisco. So I'm happy to answer any and all questions that you have. I believe a district attorney should be accessible, transparent, and community driven. Law enforcement only works if you trust in law enforcement. They should be credible, honest, ethical people because within our hands is someone's future, someone's fate. This is life and death. You want a responsible person that will treat everybody with dignity and do what justice requires, not what is politically expedient for the day. And I am that candidate, and I do hope that I earn all of your votes in the next couple weeks. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you. Any questions? See Bruce, your hand.
So thank you for coming. I want to ask, you brought up a couple of things that I think while you qualified them for your opponent, you didn't necessarily qualify them for yourself.
Mhm.
And that would be your management skills or what your management experience is. What is it and what's your vision for running this particular type of office? First question. Second question is, what is your relationship with the current city police chief and the department? Thank you.
Good questions. So I come into this role with more government experience than my opponent. I was very lucky to be unanimously appointed 3 different times by the Board of Supervisors to be a member of the San Francisco Immigrant Rights Commission, where we had strategic oversight over the Office of Civic Engagement and Immigrant Affairs. And I was one of the executive commissioners working with the director of OSEA on expanding language access. I led the effort to reduce hate crimes here in San Francisco. What's really interesting, what I like to say is London Breed, Asha Safai, Mark Farrell, and Aaron Peskin have all voted for me multiple times to be a commissioner here in San Francisco. I think the best kind of manager is an employee who has seen firsthand mismanagement and chaos. As someone who lived through the recall of the DA, led by the current DA who caused so much damage to the office, as someone who's worked in multiple DA's office, I have seen the lack of support, in many instances, the lack of training, the disrespect, the failed priorities. And so I come into this role being supported by so many of my former coworkers that I know what to do on day one to allocate resources, to make sure we have qualified, ethical, and competent people in the role, and to make sure I'm a stabilizing force. I want to be the kind of boss that I wish I had in the DA's office. And when you're a prosecutor, you're essentially managing every aspect of a case. I'm the one directing my investigators what to do, my paralegals and support staff what to do, even telling the police sergeant, I need more evidence to do X, Y, and Z. So I've handled every aspect of a case from start to finish. And that's why I come into this role qualified as someone who not only has worked in 2 different DA's offices, but I even after college was a paid intern at the Santa Clara County DA's office. So I've seen 3 different DA's offices. There's a reason why so many former judges and elected district attorneys are supporting me, none of whom are supporting my opponent. She doesn't know what she's doing when it comes to running the office. And your second question was relationship with the police. I have worked closely with the police as a prosecutor. I recognize that I can only be successful in my job if I have a good working relationship with them. But that doesn't mean that if they break the law themselves, I will still hold them accountable. Police accountability is important because nobody is above the law. I'm not coming into this job proactively seeking to prosecute police, but I will make it clear, if you break the law, my administration will hold you and everyone else, whether you're a government official, a prosecutor, a law enforcement person, I will hold you accountable. So my relationship is actually very good with a number of the police captains because the last DA had appointed me to be a community liaison of 4 different police stations. So I worked closely with the captains in the Northern Station, in the Richmond Station, Southern Station, and Tenderloin Station. And in fact, before I was going to announce my run for DA, the Richmond police captain called me and asked me to serve on his police advisory body. And I turned it down respectfully, at integrity. I said, look, I'm going to run for office. I'm not going to politicize this. So I would come in day one, not only having great rapport and actually know the people who work in the DA's office, but I know personally many of the police captains and police officers as well. Hope that answers your question.
I have one more, but I'll let somebody else have a chance.
Thanks. Go over to Alice.
Yes, I wondered if you could comment on the events surrounding the killing of Banco Brown, where it seemed that she wanted to, I've heard her referred to as Crook Jenkins, wanted to, the police arrested the security guard at Walgreens because they thought he'd committed a crime. but she seemed to take the stand your ground position since the killer asserted that he felt threatened, there would be no case. And the case was simply thrown out. And I think there's been no justice for Banco Brown to this day. If you could say something about that.
Absolutely. That case is deeply tragic and it affected me personally, and justice was not served. And there's a number of issues with Brooke Jenkins' conduct in how that case played out. First and foremost, it is not the job of a DA to make a defense argument for them. Brooke Jenkins, with her public statements during an ongoing investigation, unilaterally acquitted the suspect, which is not what a DA should do. She made prejudicial statements that doomed the case before we even had all of the evidence. She refused to release the surveillance footage, even after the Board of Supervisors unanimously asked for it, because she knew once we saw that, everyone would agree that a crime was committed. And we have to look into what her motive was, a conflict of interest that she did not disclose, breaking ethical rules. One of her close personal friends and mentors, who I used to work with, Xochitl Carrion, was the lawyer for Walgreens that worked with the DA's office on theft cases, seeking restitution. In fact, it was almost as if for a number of our cases, Walgreens acted as the lead agency. So how is it supposed to be a fair and impartial prosecution when not only the DA's office is connected with Walgreens lawyers, but the current DA's personal friend is the lawyer for that same corporation? She should have immediately recused herself, and she didn't. So what I would do as the next DA is, within my first 100 days in office, personally take this case to a grand jury and let the community decide whether or not a crime was committed, whether or not there was probable cause. And in fact, for all high-profile cases, whether it's government corruption, whether it's wage theft, whether it's law enforcement misconduct or breaking the law, it should never be the DA making a politically calculated decision to decide whether or not to file charges. Like the federal system that decides to prosecute via grand jury an indictment experience that I have on an attempted murder case, I would take this case to a grand jury. Because then it's not Ryan Kojaste prosecuting the killer of Banco Brown. It is San Franciscans, a grand jury has issued an indictment because a crime here was committed. And that would actually expedite this to a trial. There's no preliminary hearing. There's no need for unreasonable delay. An indictment is as good as gold, and a new DA can't come in and dismiss it. That's my strategy. That's my vision. And I agree with the majority of San Franciscans that a crime here was committed, and we will let the community decide what exactly those crimes were.
We had another question over here.
Hi, Ryan. Thanks for being here tonight. 26 members of the Palestinian Youth Movement are being charged by the DA for, I think, for felonies for blocking the Bay Bridge last spring. I was wondering, if you were DA, how would you handle a situation like that?
Yeah, so I believe, as do I think a lot of people, and a court of law will decide this, I think, next week, that this was a politically motivated prosecution. When you look at the disparities between the different cases, first there was 76, 78 people that blocked the Bay Bridge during APEC. That was a much bigger protest. Jenkins charged them with misdemeanors and then quietly agreed to diversion for everybody, community service and restitution for one person. Then you fast forward a couple of months to the Golden Gate Bridge protest, where it was 26 people. Still a protest that blocked a bridge, I recognize that. Smaller scale. She decides then to charge them with felonies to ensure their incarceration, which it doesn't even make sense. Similar instances, how come there is unequal justice? And then you realize, based on reporting, that she had accepted gifts from a foreign government, that she had made prejudicial statements, taking a side in what is a tragic and horrifying conflict in the Middle East. And she is doing this to appease a certain base, which is actually against everything we should stand for as ministers of justice, as prosecutors who must follow the law fairly and impartially. So what I think is going to happen is that a judge is going to disqualify her from this case. It's going to go to the Attorney General's office, and they will most likely dismiss it. And there's case precedent for this. Back in 2020, the San Luis Obispo County District Attorney decided to charge a group of Black Lives Matter protesters. He had made public statements saying he doesn't agree with Black Lives Matter. They were disqualified from that case through litigation, which is what's happening right now. I believe a court will be hearing that on October 14th. Went to Attorney General Javier Becerra, and he dismissed it. What I will say is this: we have a backlog of criminal cases. We have rapists, attempted murderers, domestic abusers walking free because of mismanagement of the system. We want to focus our limited resources on punishing nonviolent protesters when we have violent people walking free, when we have drug dealers that must be held accountable. This is not the right priorities. This is mismanagement. If I was the DA, what I would do for this case, when I recognize the importance of free speech and nonviolent protest being a bedrock of our democracy, but at the same time, I can recognize and acknowledge this was probably not the best forum because it did cause a lot of inconvenience and suffering for people stuck on the bridge. We don't have to bring them into the criminal justice system. San Francisco has what's called neighborhood courts. Without even filing charges, we can refer people to a restorative justice model where there can be a conversation that's had and perhaps community service, maybe some paying of restitution, an apology letter, a recognition of the impact, and that's it. There's no need to incarcerate nonviolent protesters because what Jenkins did with the Bay Bridge case is waste hundreds and thousands of dollars of the government when all of this could have resolved in the same way it ended up doing so without it ever coming to the criminal justice system. So again, this just shows me that she's unqualified for the job and she's being led by a political ideology rather than proper management and outcomes in the system.
Is there anyone on Zoom that has a question?
One last question that's on the Zoom chat. It says, any
Oh.
thoughts on the letter signed by 3 former mayors of city officials requesting criminal proof of the candidate Mark Farrell's conduct and actions? California Attorney General Bonta Brooke Jenkins are asked to investigate before Election Day.
So I'll first say that, again, I don't have all the facts. I don't know exactly what it is Mark Farrell did or didn't do, but from the reporting, it is very problematic and concerning. I don't have any hope that Brooke Jenkins would actually do anything. She is not going after corruption in our city. It's actually the reason Aaron Peskin is putting forth Prop C, the Inspector General, because the DA's mandate is to investigate and prosecute corruption. And that's not happening in San Francisco. How can you expect a DA to do so when she owes her political career to the mayor who appointed her? So that's why we need a new DA. We need someone who's independent of the mayor to actually fairly investigate. You know, Mark Farrell's campaign manager was Brooke Jenkins' campaign manager. These people are all intertwined. They all have ethically questionable pasts and a shaky relationship with the truth. And so I hope Rob Bonta takes it up. I mean, we have an entire spectrum of people who came together asking for this. Willie Brown, Art Agnos, Frank Jordan, who I don't think have ever agreed on something before. And so if I am the DA, I would do my honest due diligence and I would take this case up because it was asked of it. I can't make any guarantees as to what would happen. But I can be for certain that I doubt Brooke Jenkins would do anything about this because she herself has had quite the ethically ambiguous past when it's come to the work she did before the DA's office and even now because she's under investigation by the State Bar of California, not only for ethics violations, but even a crime that she has committed, stealing confidential documents.
I have one last question. It's selfish. So I'm currently recently reappointed to the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force. And in certain parts of state law, the DA is named as being an officer that can take up certain either open meetings or public disclosure acts on a level of enforcement.
Mhm.
And so I've been on the task force since 2005, and not once has a DA given us any kind of attention around it, except for Chesa Boudin, but he was just about in dealing with his recall election at that time, recalled situation at that time. So he wasn't really up for taking anything new up that wasn't, he hadn't fully researched.
Mhm.
But there's, that body doesn't have, there wasn't a much enforcement written into the law for that body. It's all, they can refer it to someone else. But DAs are basically say over and over again that they only prosecute criminal cases,
Mhm.
that this would be more of a administrative kind of thing. But it's written in state law,
Mhm.
and they refuse to take any action on it. Would you consider that?
You know, the DA should have a white collar crime unit, a special prosecutions unit, all of which has been severely dismantled by the current DA. So what I can commit to you without fully recognizing the landscape is that I would want, one, to have a robust special prosecutions unit in the DA's office that would go after environmental crimes, law enforcement misconduct, corporations for wage theft and labor violations, and certainly an avenue that's open to partner with other people throughout the city and the state to review these kinds of instances.
Yeah, this is areas of transparency.
Right.
It's
And that's
either
important.
open meetings laws or public records
Right.
disclosure.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that that's something that certainly would be within the purview of a DA, because our job is, one, to hold people accountable. But we can also sue people. We've done civil lawsuits as the DA. So I think this could be an opportunity to have further discussions and perhaps collaborate on what is an important issue. Because I think recently there was an article by Carl Olson, was it in the SF Standard, who had written that Mayor Breed and David Chu are actually breaking the law in deleting their text messages. We want an open and transparent city government. And that's something that I truly believe in, and my opponent does not. So definitely, I would hope to have that conversation with you
Great.
and the task force.
Thank you.
Hopefully in a couple months.
And that was Smith versus San Jose.
Right.
Thank you.
All right, well, yeah, well, thank you so much for coming and joining us and yeah, telling us a little bit more about yourself. So yeah, maybe
Absolutely.
another.
Well, thank you, everybody. The best way to help is, one, tell your friends, take a window sign, and make sure to vote. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yeah, and thanks everybody. So that's our meeting for October. It was good to see everyone in person and on Zoom, and have a good rest of your evening.
Yeah, good to see you. More now. I've never turned down an opportunity to talk about the business. And as DA, I will continue that a very important public facing relation. Answer yes. I think there's a reason it was out there. Outside of the bus station this morning, somebody wrote my mom, they're like, well, how are you gonna be out here? I'm like, out right now, you have questions. They were like, good answer. How do you better hear about what you have to say? So that's why I think that people will take that seriously. Vote, and I think because it's a presidential election, it's gonna be a professional. Sure.
We need to vacate the room, everybody. Time to go.
Yes, you're right.
David, I see you.